tech stuff, right? I'm like, I can't hear anything. You're on Bluetooth, Brittany. Have you guys ever done that? Leave your Bluetooth on and then you can't hear anything. Okay. All right. I think we can hear. Oh, I gotta grab my microphone. I had it just sitting there. Okay. All right. Let's get started. Today, I'm going to talk about 3 tips for having more self-discipline, right? So, for those of you who don't know who I am, or if you've just stumbled across my page or things like that, my name is Brittany, and I help moms basically barriers that come when you grow up in a like poor or low socioeconomic status environment. So my goal is to help people through the barriers of basically growing up in poverty and overcoming some of the mindsets and the obstacles that come with that. And the reason I like to do that is so that we can provide our families with more opportunities. Okay. So in that process, I have learned a ton about myself and personal development, but also about things and traits of what makes successful people and what makes great leaders. And self discipline is one of those things. But a lot of times when we think about self discipline, we think about it being like an innate ability or a fixed skill, right? Something that you're just kind of born with. So that's why today we're going to talk about the 3 tips for having more discipline, because in actuality, self-discipline in general is a learned skill. Yes, there are people who are naturally more prone to having self-discipline, but that doesn't mean that it's something we're necessarily born with and that it's fixed, right? Fixed means we cannot change it. And in actuality, we can change our discipline, right? I mean, we see this in I think we see this a lot in our kids, right? And especially like as they're more responsibilities. Like for me, I think of like middle school and high school is when we see like we build some self discipline. And then I feel like those grades, it kind of slides away again. And then like college years and young adult, we see some more of that self discipline come back in. Right. And that could just be due to a lot of things of, priorities and things like that. Okay. So that's good news that this is a learned skill. Okay. Um, for me, I would definitely say those high school and right after high school, like 18, 19 is really when I struggled the most with self-discipline, because I had like a lot of like fitting in and belonging, right? Which can affect our self discipline because we're thinking about what other people are doing. And also a lot of like fear of missing out, right? FOMO. And for me, like that overcame, or that was more important than having self discipline. So, like, I should be doing this, right? But I'm scared of missing out. So instead of like, if I think like high school, instead of doing homework, I'm going to go hang out with my friends. Right. Um, but what happens is we get out of the habit of having self discipline, and then sometimes it can be really, really hard. So let's get into it. First thing is, I want you to think about when I say the word self discipline, usually we have a couple of things that float through our brains. For some of you, and let me know in the comments if this is you guys, but for some of you, it might have been like oh man, I have like no self-discipline, right? Like that was me like at the end of high school and right after high school of like no self-discipline. That was also kind of me like teaching when kids would bring in cookies or cupcakes or sweets, donuts and stuff lounge. I'm like, "Oh, I have no self-discipline, right? I will eat like 3 donuts in a day." Right? Um, and then some of you might have really strong self-discipline skills, right? And then a lot of us are like kind of in the middle. But sometimes what we think is instantly we go to, oh, I don't have any self discipline, right? And we think of all of these ways that we have no discipline. So that's kind of the first tip is to really pinpoint and think what was your first instinct? What did you say to yourself? Was it, I have no self discipline, right? So that's the first kind of tip is to be aware and to be able to change that self talk, right? And a huge part of that is knowing that self discipline is learned and not fixed, right? So instead of saying, I have no self discipline, we can say, I have self discipline. Maybe it's just not as strong when it comes to sweets, right? Or maybe I have really, really strong self discipline when it comes to food and exercise and drinking my water, but maybe I have no self discipline when it comes to saving money and I just spend all my money, right? So when we can acknowledge that and focus in on when we tell ourselves, I have no self discipline, and we can change that by just saying, I have self discipline, right? I am self disciplined, or I choose to be more self disciplined. I choose to think about how I spend money more closely, right? I choose to think about how many donuts I eat in the staff lounge, right? So that's the first tip is to really acknowledge what we think about it and kind of change and flip the script on ourselves. The next one is to choose one thing. Like if you're trying to work on self discipline and learn, it's really helpful if we choose one thing, right? A lot of times, what happens when we try to be like, I'm going to get my life together, I'm going to be more self disciplined, we like pack on all of the things we can do, right? I'm going to wake up early. I'm going to drink 64 ounces of water. I'm going to exercise for an hour every single day. And then what happens is we just like completely burn ourselves out. And we also play into that mindset that I was just talking about a second ago of like, you're not self disciplined. That plays into that, right? Because what does your body and your brain say? See, I told you. I told you you weren't self disciplined and you wouldn't be able to do this, right? But not the problem that you couldn't do it. The problem is like you overwhelmed yourself by putting too many things on your plate to be self disciplined. So choose one thing. Is it going to be waking up early? That's your one thing. Okay. And actually, I don't remember what book it was in, but I actually read that like willpower takes a lot of energy. It was around teaching and willpower of kids. And like having willpower and showing restraint takes so much energy. Like it uses up a lot more energy than we're used to. So when we try to be self disciplined or like have that willpower in too many avenues all at once, right? Then it just drains us, right? So it's really important that we choose one thing so that we're not spending all of our energy on just trying to have willpower and self discipline, right? So just choose one thing and make it like super simple, right? I'm going to wake up even 15 minutes earlier. It doesn't have to be an hour. It doesn't have to be at 5 in the morning, right? You could say, I'm just going to wake up 15 minutes earlier for, 10 days or tomorrow, right? And then tomorrow or for a week, right? However long. All right. And then, oh, I have so many more. But the last one I'm going to share with you today, because we're running out of time, I'll put the other ones in like a blog or something like that. I don't know. I'll list them out, or maybe I'll go live again. So keep your eye out for that, because I do have more, but we're short on time. Oh, and speaking of one small thing before we move on, um, I just started this. It starts on Monday, but I actually have a 5 days to fall back in love with goal setting. It's a free challenge in the Facebook group that I started and moderate. And thinking about choosing one thing and goal setting and like making that fun and no pressure, right? Like choosing one thing and sticking with it with no pressure, right? It's going to be super fun. Okay. And that's in my Facebook community, right? So then the last thing is, when you're thinking about self discipline, to also be willing to recommit, right? I think it was Gay Hendricks that said, commitment takes recommitting. Commitment takes recommitting. Having self discipline is about recommitting. It's not about, oh, I failed once, right? And then so I'm done self discipline because I failed, right? I didn't do it. I didn't do the thing. And now, no, it's about like saying, like, oh, okay, I ate 3 donuts in the staff lounge today. Not necessarily, however, I recommit, right? Um, or, it's about, oh, I spent, a ton of money. Okay, recommit. How can I get back on track? Right? So commitment takes recommitting, right? Self-discipline is actually just you recommitting every time or every single day, right? Until it becomes a habit and a routine. So we think that it's something that like people just have, when actuality is just something that people recommit to, right? A new day, a reset, a restart, and a recommitment, right? Maybe it's every day, maybe it's every half an hour, depending on what you are striving for, right? Maybe it's every month. It depends on what you're striving for, right? All righty. So I will let you guys go. 3 tips for having more self-discipline. Please let me know in the comments if you have any other questions or tips or anything like that. And be on the lookout. I'll throw in my other tips on the blog just because I didn't want to take up all your time today. And you guys have the best day. Bye-bye.